Drumroll Please by Lisa Jenn Bigelow. 3. Treble Cliff lived up to its name. As we climbed the steep, pine-needled path, I was huffing and puffing. Olivia's forehead shone. She shook out her hair and scooped it into a fresh ponytail. I wished I could do the same, but last week the stylist had cut mine exactly the wrong length, long enough to make my neck hot, but too short to pull back. At least I didn't have to carry my bass all the way up here, Olivia said. After leaving our auditions, we had followed the map to the lodge where she had picked out a locker. Cardio's good for you, I said, panting. Not dying of a heart attack is good for me, Olivia said, and stopped because waiting for us at the top of the hill was yet another counselor with yet another clipboard. Oh, I said at the same time as Olivia said, nice. The counselor had spiky blue hair. Rings went up the both sides of her ears, and she had more rings in her eyebrow and her nose. I wondered if she was hidden way back here in the woods so she didn't scare off the touchier parents. But her round face was friendly. Hey, she said, I'm Blair. Whom do I have the pleasure? Olivia and Melly, Olivia said. Let me guess. Blair chewed her pen. Drummer, obviously, she said, pointing at my stick bag. And I'm gonna say lead guitar. She jerked her chin at Olivia. Olivia beamed. Bass, actually, for camp purposes, but believe me, I'm all about leading from behind. I'll just bet. Blair said. Tents are starting to fill up, but you should still have your pick. Any of the yellow ones. Blues for stuff. The ranger will be by with his truck any minute. He'll drop your stuff at the bottom of the hill. I couldn't help it. I groaned. Blair's lips twitched. It's the price we pay for this primordial estate. Everyone knows this is the best high-tech Camp Rockaway. Take a second and look around. We did. We were surrounded by towering pines. The treetops framed a circle of brilliant turquoise sky. I got dizzy staring up. A good kind of dizzy. At night, Blair said, that break in the trees is a tunnel to the freaking stars. She let that sink in before adding with a wink. Plus, if it storms, all the water runs downhill to the Carroll Kingdom. Go on now. Pick out your tent. When I first heard we were going to stay in tents, I imagined flimsy pup tents staked to the ground, roots and rocks poking up through our sleeping bags. Olivia had shown me photos on Camp Rockaway's website proving otherwise, but they hadn't prepared me for the real thing. They were made of big and bulky canvas, rigged on wooden frames of the ground floor. Through the open flaps, we could see the cots set up on each tent's plank floor. There's people in that one. Olivia ticked them off her fingers. In other words, there's people in all of them, I said. How do we know which one to choose? What are you afraid of? I teased. That we'll end up with someone who snores? Olivia had a deviated septum. When she fell asleep, it sounded like someone was revving up a chainsaw. She threw me a dirty look. But when I crossed my eyes, she laughed. End of the line, Olivia said as we approached the final tent. Sitting on the front steps was a freckled girl with glasses and spirals of reddish-brown hair playing a harmonica. Her song chugged along cheerfully as her lips skated along the silver surface. She lowered it when she saw us. Hey, sorry to interrupt. Do you have 2 empty beds? Olivia asked. I've got 3. The girl unfolded herself and stood up. I wasn't short, but I barely came up to her shoulder. I'm Shauna, she said. You two are first-timers, right? Olivia said, pointing to herself. And Melly, it's that obvious we're new? There's something in your faces. Your eyes are like extra big. Shauna grinned. You play harmonica? I asked. As if what we'd seen and heard before was a hallucination. C- in conversational skills, Melly. Shauna said, Yep, and guitar. I'm a country girl, or I should say country woman. Women in country music are infantilized enough without me doing it myself. Infantilized? Olivia asked. Oh, men singing, I want to go down by the river with my sweet little girl and drink whiskey on the 4th of July. That kind of thing. If they're drinking whiskey with actual girls, they're pedophiles. I had no idea what to make of Shauna, but I was pretty sure I liked her. What about T2? She said. Drums, of course, she said, nodding at my stick bag. That was it again. At Camp Rockaway, everyone knew just by looking at me how I spent my free time. Back home, most people thought my stick bag was an ugly purse. I play guitar and bass. Olivia said, but I've only brought bass. Shauna nodded. Wise choice. There's always an army of guitar players. Luggage. Luggage! Blair bellowed across the campsite. Get your luggage, bottom of the hill. Oh boy. Olivia sighed. Do we actually need any of that stuff? Maybe we can leave it there for the 2 weeks and the ranger can pick it up before we go home. Did you bring the mosquito netting? You'll want that, for sure, Shauna asked. My first time at camp, I made the mistake of going without. I had so many mosquito bites, by the time I went home, my parents didn't recognize me. I had the feeling her mosquito bites would have blended right in with her freckles, but point taken. I had no interest in being with a bunch of mosquitoes on like all-night buffet. Come on, I told Olivia. Cardio, remember? When we get back to school, we'll get A's in PE for sure. I'll go with you, Shauna said. There's no use postponing the inevitable. On our way down, we passed the girls coming up with their gear. The girl from the taxi was one of them. Hello again, she said as we brushed past each other on the path. I managed only a startled hi before she was gone up the hill. Who was that? Olivia asked. She acted like she knew you. I shook my head. How could she? We've just got here. Maybe you've got friends here that you haven't told me about. Olivia joked. Secret rock and roll friends in the middle of the woods? No, I said. Only you. The ranger had left an enormous mound of luggage at the sink post for Trouble Cliff. The 3 of us grabbed our stuff. If climbing the hill had been hard the first time, dragging our luggage with us could have been an Olympic event. I was dying to rinse off, and the hike to the shower house, wherever it was, would have been totally worth it. But by the time we got back to our tent, we had a new bunkmate. This girl was tiny, her curly black hair cut short, super short. The only big things about her were her wide-set eyes and her smile, which flashed dazzling white against her dark brown skin. She threw her arms across Shauna's waist, which was basically as high as she could reach, and Shauna returned the hug. Hi, the new girl said, turning to Olivia and me and sticking out her hand. Tony Davis, at your service. Her grip was knuckle-crunching. Tony and I have been camp friends for years, Shauna said, her arm around Tony's shoulders. Get this, she's a classically trained pianist and rapper. Classically trained pianist and rapper. Olivia echoed. Is that a thing? As sure as Jewish country singer is, Tony said. She and Shauna both slapped hands. What about you two? What's your jam? Oh, Melly and I are almost up for almost anything, Olivia said. We've been getting into classic lately. You know, The Who, The Stones, that kind of thing. Anything, so long as it rocks. The way she said it made us sound way cooler than we were. At least at our school it wasn't enough to rock out in your basement. Until you'd played your first block party, you were just one more kind of nerd. If obsessing over music gave us anything more cred than playing video games or competing in spell beans, I had yet to notice, but it was fun. I think Shauna was waiting for me to say something too, but since Olivia had already answered for both of us, I only shrugged in agreement. The 4 of us teamed up to hang our mosquito net. Shauna and Tony were experts. When we finished, it looked like we each had a green gauze cage suspended over our beds. Hey, weird question. Olivia said as we rolled out our sleeping bags. "Where are all the boys? Did they get abducted by aliens on their way from their auditions?" Tony and Shauna burst out laughing. "I wish," Tony said. "Their units are on the other side of the camp." Shauna explained. "Trust me, you'll see plenty of them at practice, meals, activities. It's actually really nice to get a break from them." I was just as glad. Not that I had anything in particular against boys, but I'd seen way too many movies where boys sneaked into girls' slumber parties to steal their underwear. Plus, I didn't want to risk boys seeing me wearing my pajamas with no bra underneath. It was bad enough that our bathroom was so far away. Bathrooms were supposed to be down the hall, not down a hill. "Why?" Tony asked. "Are you looking for love?" "Of course not," Olivia said. "I'm here to play music like everybody else." We all turned at a knock on our tent pole. A head of blue hair popped inside. "All set?" Blair asked. "We're meeting in the first circle in 2 minutes. "We'll be right out," Shauna said. "Ready, sisters?" She reached out and linked elbows with Tony, who linked elbows with Olivia, who linked elbows with me, and suddenly I was being towed out of the tent into the pine-scented sunshine. I had never had a sister before. Never even had someone who called me sister. But even though I'd known Shauna and Tony less than half an hour, it didn't feel as weird as I would have expected.